The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Hoppe Hour.
What up? What is happening? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and I'm very pumped about my next guest that is sitting live on Hoppe Hour. From WTSP 10 News in Tampa Bay, Chris Fischer, the sports anchor, is live sitting in on Hoppe Hour. What's up, dude?
What's going on, Ryan? Thanks for having me in here, man. It's awesome.
Dude, I've moved to town about 7 months ago, and I love seeing the local news just because I find it fascinating, and I tuned on 10 News, and I loved your whole way of how you report the news. So I'm very pumped to have you on the show.
I appreciate it. I've heard nothing but great things, and when I've heard this podcast, I think it's pretty awesome.
What was it about the podcast? I don't want to boost my ego too much, but what part did you hear? Like, what drew you in where you thought, okay, I'll do the show?
I think you allow everybody just to be themselves, laid back, have fun with it, and it's not so much where you're going after anybody. You just want to get to know people, and I think that's awesome. Because
so many people in radio and TV, man, they're all about themselves, and they have an ego. And that's what I've learned is you can't burn bridges in this business. And if you want to make it far and you want to make it for a long time, you can't be a douchebag. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. There are times, though, I'll tell you this much. I'll be openly honest about this. You got to be aggressive and passionate in what you go after. And I'm one of those people where you got to be passionate about what you go after, the stories you report. But, you know, you got to get along with everybody because you're always around this same group of people, and I agree with you. You can't burn bridges.
Is it weird ever, even though it seems like you would get along with everybody, is it ever weird when you're, like, covering something and you see the rivals there, or is it like everyone's cool with each other?
I'll be honest with you. Not all the time is everybody cool with one another, but I don't mind seeing the rivals there because I think it pushes you to be better at your own job and what you do, the questions you ask, and that's where also, you know, your relationship with whatever your interview subject is comes through because they may answer your questions a little bit better than they'll answer somebody else's. I can tell you there's people within this own market, you know, that certain athletes like and certain athletes don't like. And you can see that by the answers that they give and they provide and the time that they dedicate toward it.
Who are some of the guys that you are close to when it comes to guys that play in this market?
Guys that I'm close to that I can play in this market? Well, I could say, you know, with guys that we've had in Channel 10 that are just phenomenal, like Chris Archer over with the Rays, great guy. Levante David over with the Bucks. A lot of the Bucks PR staff are just very good people we get along with also. And then with the Lightning, Ben Bishop's a great guy. Haven't had the opportunity to have him in studio, but just a bunch of the Lightning guys collectively, such good people, great interviews, very engaging, and they have plenty of time for the media, and that's always appreciated.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of guys that play in the NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, it gets to their head so that when you see a guy who's humble, it's very special. You know what I mean? Because there's so many guys that get the big paychecks and it gets to their head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can see guys like Chris Archer, who got the big paycheck last year, making $40 million with the Rays.
Yeah.
But it didn't go to his head. In fact, he does more community service with it. You know, he just was telling me the other night, I was out at Thanksmas at Joe Madden's event at Ava in 717 in South Tampa. He was telling me that he went down to Carousel with Major League Baseball, dedicating his time to teaching kids the game who are underprivileged. And then you got guys like Kevin Kiermaier, who are the next crop of players that will get a big paycheck. But you can see that that money's not going to go to his head. In fact, when I was talking with KK before the offseason, he said he was going to take his Chevy Malibu and he was going to give it to his dad because he's been driving a Chevy Malibu as a Major League Baseball player the last 2 seasons. And just goes to show you, these guys still stick to the roots. They're humble. They're good people. I understand what you're getting at. There are guys out there that basically can get the big heads, get the big paychecks, as in baseball we call them bonus babies, the early picks. But for the most part, I would say those are the smaller percentage of guys that are actually within the professional sports because a lot of them have humble beginnings and they know what it's like to come from that.
But with the flip side, have you ever seen someone that began really humble? Now, you don't have to say any names, but have you seen any guys that were really humble, but then over the years, they built their craft, they made the big cash, maybe they won a championship, where they go from being so humble to then kind of being a douchebag? Have you seen a player where it's like come on, man, what happened to you?
I'm not going to name him, but I will say there was one in the headlines this week in the NFL, not in our own city, but it comes from humble beginnings. Still does very well and good things within his own community of where he's from, but has moved away a little bit from what he said, some of his actions, the moves that he's made, from being that good person and establishing, well, he already established, but just moving away from that, and it's made it kind of a problem. And some of the tabloids, or newspaper headlines came out against him this week, and it came back to bite him in the butt.
Now, what do you do to get the most out of the athletes? Because a lot of guys ask the same cliche things over and over. And
Sure.
what I like about you is you find the different things to ask. So what do you do to get the prep?
I think, and you said the right word there, it's all about prep. You got to know what you're talking about going in. You need to know backstory lines. You need to know what the coaches have already said. And then there's two big pet peeves, and I noticed them yesterday, and I'll just throw them out there, that we hear in the Bucs locker room. And if you're ever listening in, the listener at home right now or wherever you're at, if you ever hear a press conference in a Buccaneers locker room and somebody asks, talk about this, okay, that's poor.
My God.
Or my other favorite is when, and this happened so many times yesterday, I wanted to hit myself in the head with a microphone. There was one reporter in the locker room who sat there and, well, no pressure on the quarterback and too many penalties. And then he just let the athlete stand there, or Buccaneers player stand there, and wait for the question. But there was never a question asked. So guys like that, it's, ask a question. Get to the point and get out. Now, there are times, myself, I'll get too wordy on questions, and I hate that. It's a pet peeve of mine, but I do it at times.
Are there ever any guys that you are pumped to interview, even if it's a win or loss, where you go right to them because they'll give you a few good nuggets?
Absolutely. And, there's my certain guys within, whether it's the Bucs locker room or the Rays locker room. In fact, funny thing was Kevin Kiermaier asked me all the time, Chris, why do you always come straight to me? Well, it's like, Kevin, two reasons. I work in a digital medium of television, right? So women like looking at Kevin Kiermaier on the TV screen. He's got these big blue eyes, and he's very intelligent, talks very well, gives great answers, gives his opinion. So there's certain guys like that always give great answers, and they're charismatic that way. And yes, you go right to them. Another guy is Gerald McCoy in the Bucs locker room. I mean, he's very open and honest about what his opinion is, whether it's a win or a loss. And that's why the Bucs call him the face of the franchise, because he does carry it on his sleeve, and no matter what he says, his actions off the field and what he does in the community, those are always good guys to go talk to.
Now, how has Jameis been during this year towards the media?
I think he's been great so far. And it's been an evolutionary process for him, because I was there the night that he was drafted by the Bucs, and he was very engaging at that time. I remember interviewing him when he was at Florida State. He was very engaging at that time. But I will tell you this, after the Bucs got a hold of him, they tempered what he was doing, the way he was talking. He was giving very matter-of-fact, not matter-of-fact, but more of a in-the-can answer, if you know what I mean by that, okay? So, but now they're winning. Now they're letting him out a little bit more, and you can see it. He's talking a little bit more. But when they lose, he's going back in the can a little bit with those answers.
What do you think of that? Because I think that's not, real. You know what I mean? I feel like you should let him talk if they lose or they win.
I agree with you, but that's not going to be the way they're going to allow a 21-year-old quarterback.
That's true.
Of the next face of the franchise to be able to talk, because at times, as we've seen with Jameis in the past, he may say too much and get himself into trouble.
Very
and then
true.
the Bucs PR staff has to sit there and work on that. Every one of these guys, okay, generally, if there's an open locker room where there's a chance to talk to these players, there is a PR staff member standing right there ready to cut off the interview or to give them prep notes about the game prior to it. And so it's very controlled in that way.
Have you ever had an argument or a disagreement with someone in the PR department where they got mad about what you wanted to ask or you asked, or are they usually okay?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you one that happened last week. Chris Conte is from California. He's from L.A. area. So the Bucs safety, I walked up to the Bucs PR because I don't pull punches. I'm not one of those people. I'm very honest. I'll tell you what I want, and if you don't tell me what you want, well, I'll just keep going. But I told the Bucs PR staff that I'm going to ask about San Bernardino just to find out if Chris is from that area, because I did not know if he knows anybody in connection with that, because it was the next day afterward, and it was a big deal. But Chris was on it. The Bucs PR staff said, no, we would prefer if you're not. And I go, I'm still going to ask the question. I don't really care. So I walked up to Chris. I asked him off camera, because I'm not going to sandbag him. And I said, do you know anybody or, any connection? He goes, no, not really, but I have friends, who had people that know people there. And we were talking like that. But a lot of times you get a chance to know the athletes. And I can't say that all the PR staff really likes that, because they like to be the middleman to be able to separate you two, if that's the case.
Have you ever had it where a guy never opened up to you, but over time you've become sort of close to him, maybe?
Yeah, but that was definitely in different markets back when I worked in Pennsylvania. But more of a, how do I put this? It was more of a high school thing. The only one I can remember, honestly, was a high school coach. And the other station had been it was like the Bright House Sports Network of here, okay? It was it covered high school extensively. Well, we really didn't, and I got my station really involved in that. And finally, this guy, after a while, opened up, and we got to know each other very well, and he's a very good coach and a very nice man. I'm just not going to name his names. I'm sorry about that, but because I don't think it would have any relevance here.
Yeah.
But you do learn, and you grow with these guys, But it takes time. It's definitely an evolutionary process. They're not going to like somebody right away, that's for sure.
Now, when did you do an interview when you knew that you were good at this? Because everybody, when they begin, let's say, radio or acting or music or TV, you're not very good and you have to work on your craft. So when did you have an interview when you were like, man, I have potential?
Wow, that's a great question. I would have to say, and just because it's and for lack of a better phrase, I was at Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
And I was working in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And there was a coach named David Bennett. And if you guys go on YouTube, he has one of the all-time classic YouTube hits where he talks about a dog and a cat. He's telling his players, don't be a bunch of cats. Be a dog.
I've seen that.
Okay. It's millions of hits. At least I believe so. Well, I used to interview Coach Bennett every Wednesday, and he used to call me the little pit bull, because I would always ask the tough question. And he finally came up to me one day, I'll never forget this. He gave me a pair of tennis shoes. He says, you know what? Adidas just came in, gave us all these. We have some extras. I'd like you to have them. I go, why is that, Coach? He goes, because you do such a great job at what you do. I want you to be rewarded too. Really nice guy, So there's that right then there, it kind of clicked with me. I was like, well, maybe I do have potential to do this as a career long term.
Dude, isn't it awesome when guys that are famous or known embrace you and give you advice with that? Here in town, I wasn't sure about myself, but Mike Kelta has helped me so much on air and off the air. So isn't it amazing when these guys who are famous help you, even when you're a young kid trying to get your foot in the door?
Absolutely. I mean, there's I've got two phenomenal mentors. Go back to when I was a producer in Orlando. One's at NFL Network right now. His name is Dan Helly. He hosts the Total Access Show. And the other is Zach Klein at WSB, which is a powerhouse station in Atlanta. It's one of the most reputable affiliates in the country. And so to have those two guys in my corner, to be able to call them when I can, to ask their advice, and for them to teach the way for me, it has been incredible for me, and it was like a godsend, really.
What is some of the best advice that they've given you?
Brevity. Be short. Get to the point. Look the part. Things like that go a long way in television, because we don't have a lot of time. It's not radio where I can sit here and talk for 3 hours or go to the next segment. I get a minute 30 to talk about something at 6 o'clock and 2 minutes, maybe 2:30 if I'm lucky at 11 o'clock. So I have to get to the point, try to be witty, try to be a little funny, engage the viewer a little bit. But overall, my job is to provide the news as quickly and as concise as possible.
What do you do on days that there's really nothing to talk about? How do you find prep to fill 2 minutes?
It's really, for me, it's not that tough because I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking into something. I'll check out even sites like Yardbarker, Barstool Sports, Deadspin, Extra Mustard on CNN, on SportsIllustrated.com. Just the off-the-wall stuff. If there's something different out there, if there's something on Twitter, I check Twitter like you wouldn't believe religiously. So there's always something turning out there, I think. Even there's probably like 2 real dead days of the year, and one of them's the day after the All-Star break. And to me, that's a time when you can, find a story you found in the past, just bring that back up at that time.
How do you figure out what news would be unique for Tampa? Because there might be some great news from Portland, but we might not care about it here in Tampa. So how do you figure out what would relate to the Bay Area?
You do a local tie as much as you can.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to give you one today. It was announced that Pete Rose will not be reinstated into Major League Baseball. Now, I saw one of your Twitter followers had mentioned that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way I opened up the story is I remember being a kid from Clearwater and seeing Pete Rose play spring training games here. The Cincinnati Reds had their spring training in Tampa and in Plant City. And I basically said, back in the 80s, if you went to a spring training game, your dad probably told you, hey, that guy is the all-time hits king. He's going to be a Hall of Fame baseball player. 30 years later, nearly 30 years later, he's still not in the Hall of Fame. So you try to localize it as much as possible just to try to grab that viewer's attention, say, I remember going to spring training games when I was a kid, or I remember telling that to my son at that time. Even if it was Portland, any local ties, a player, did he go to the University of Florida?
Yeah.
Did he go to Miami? What is the tie-in? Because if not, to me, let SportsCenter handle it. Let Fox Sports handle it, because I can't do anything with it.
Now, what is Tampa Bay like as a sports scene? Because when I lived in the Midwest, I'll be honest, I would view Tampa Bay as an awful sports city just by the Rays' attendance whenever I saw it on Fox Sports. But I'm seeing that they're diehard USF fans, they're diehard Buccaneer fans when they're good, and they're diehard Lightning fans. So why does Tampa Bay get such a bad rap when it comes to the fan base?
This is such a multi-level question, and I'm going to give you my most honest answer.
Yeah.
Growing up from here, I will agree with you. Tampa Bay fans struggle for an identity because
it's weird.
There's transient fans from other cities, right? Other states. They all have deep-rooted interest from the teams they grew up with. They didn't grow up with the Rays. I didn't grow up with the Rays. I left here. They came in 97, 98. I left in 97 to go away to college. I have no affiliation. I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan. I grew up bat-boying for the Philadelphia Phillies. So a lot of the kids that grew up around here in my age group, they grew up with their spring training teams. Those became their teams. And then the Bucks, the Bucks stunk for years. And the Lightning took a while to get that generation going of Lightning fans. So I think you're going to see the next generations of fans in the Tampa Bay area really start to take hold with the Rays, the Bolts, and the Bucks. And become, big-time passionate fans. But I also believe the Trop is empty a lot because we have boats around here. We have sand. Sports are the secondary fun thing to do in this town.
Yeah.
It's not the primary. More people would rather go out to happy hour on Clearwater Beach than probably sit in the Trop, which is 72 degrees, spend $10 on a beer, when they can watch the game out there and catch a sunset.
And it's on the other side of the bridge, almost out of St. Pete. Why would somebody who lives in Brandon or Newport Richie on the other side of the bridge, when that's a part of the Bay Area, why the hell would they go across the Howard Franklin in traffic to go to a game? You know what I mean?
And that's my argument was, okay, my ideal scenario, China right now is building an island, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we just build an island, put a ballpark on it, and if years ago, if they wouldn't have screwed up in the taxes and basically they would have voted for the tram, I forget what it's called, but if they would have just instilled that, well, then we would have public transportation to and from it. I'm joking here a little bit, but at the same token, there's just not a real position to put this stadium for, in my view. I think it would be better in West Shore, but we're not going to be able to do that because the airport's right there, and you can't have that scenario. People in Tampa don't want to drive across the bridge to Pinellas, and people in Pinellas are more likely to drive across the bridge than the people from Tampa. It's because there's a city vibe in Tampa, and it's just more of a beach vibe in Pinellas.
Yeah, it's weird because I used to hate on the Rays. I was like, oh, the fans don't care. But there's not that much to do around the Trop,
Yeah, I mean, you have to go down to downtown St. Pete, but I want you to know this. The Rays are in the top 10% in baseball, top 10 teams in baseball for average percentage of viewership on television. So
really?
People are watching.
Yeah.
It's not the case they're not watching. They do like the Rays. Problem is, everybody likes a winner. Okay, you're from the Midwest, right? What do you do in the wintertime there?
Hide in the house.
Right. Okay, you have nothing to do. That's not the case here in Florida.
Yeah.
We can still go to the beach right now.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
We can still go shopping. We can do so many different things. So baseball or football or hockey are not always the top priority at this time. That's why there's empty seats, okay? Up in the Northeast, where I used to live, that's all you had to do. You have an Eagles game. You had a Flyers game in Philadelphia. There wasn't really too much to do around there. You couldn't go to the beach. So you can still go to a park here. And there's too many interests, and that's the problem.
Do you ever miss the passion of a town that's into one team? Like, I love Tampa Bay, but I kind of miss having the whole town root for one team. I just kind of find it weird that you have Cowboy fans, Giant fans,
right.
Bears fans, just because everybody moves down from where it's cold. So do you ever miss seeing just crazy Eagle fans, or are you cool with the Tampa Bay sports scene?
I like the diversity of it as covering sports. Do I like to be honest, the lack of passion? No. I think the more passionate fan base out there, the better it is actually for our jobs, whether it's financial or whether it's job security or opinions or just viewership. Because the fact that there's so many laissez-faire fans, it doesn't really help the Tampa Bay sports community because they're only getting a certain percentage of loyal followers.
Yeah, because it just seems like when you have so many different people that move here, it's hard to grow a fan base because you don't know who roots for what team. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just so odd because I grew up in Illinois, so it was all about Cubs, Bears, Bulls.
Right.
I lived in Cleveland for a half a year. It was all about the Cavs then. And it was weird when I moved down here. It was about the Bolts in May and June when I would cover games for the Bone. But then it was weird that you would have no passion about the Rays. And even with the Bucks, it's just so odd here. You know what I mean?
It is. It's a different type of sports market. There's without it. It's the way I've always put it. This sports market, while it's market 11 television-wise demographic in the country, it plays like a smaller city. Only because we're a small town area. We're very spread out.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody in this area kind of knows everybody, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, it really can hurt because the passion is not there all the time. It's not the people up north, like your point, right? They have nothing to do but sit inside. So they live and bleed by what happens on Sunday afternoons on their television in front of them because that's all they have.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not the case for some guy who just took his boat out or is washing it on the dock and he just happens to have the game on the radio. It's a completely different situation.
What are some of your favorite things to do here in Tampa? Because it was weird when I moved down here. I'm like, I can go to the beach. I can go for walks in October. Sure. Because it's just weird in the Midwest where you just have 3 months of nice weather. So what are some things you like to do when you take advantage of this great area?
I go down to the beach quite a bit.
Oh, I love it.
I do. I was just down there 2 days ago, actually.
Which beach?
Clearwater Beach, just because I'm from Clearwater, so it's convenient for me. I like to ride my bike now across that new causeway, on Clearwater Causeway, because I live kind of by there. But, boy, oh boy, I grew up surfing. I mean, if there is waves, but there's not really waves, so I'll go to the East Coast. And then I do like going to ball games. While I'm not a fan of the Trop, I'll be openly honest about that. I was at the Lightning game last week just on my own. But I like going to ball games, a minor league ball game even. I mean, just because I like that atmosphere. That's something that definitely misses here. When you want to talk about the whole thing, too, the salesmanship of the atmosphere is not here. And that's the problem.
Yeah, it's weird because you'll have the fans that go, I believe that we will win, but that's just like maybe 90 drunk guys that are just wearing all blue that cheer it. They walk by, and then that's it.
Well, I can tell you this much also. Being from here, when I lived up north, remember how passionate high school fans were?
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's all these kids had to do. Well, guess what? The fans, I mean, I don't know where you went to high school exactly, but when I was working in Pennsylvania, they would get 10,000 people for their high school game like it was their job. Okay? Out in Lakeland, they get that, but that takes like Lakeland Senior versus Lakeland Kathleen. Up in Pennsylvania, that was an every week thing. Even when I worked in South Carolina, that was like an every week thing to get thousands of people. When you go to Clearwater High, Countryside High around here, St. Pete High, they don't get that many people. It's just moms and dads. And so the passion for sports is just, it's there, but then again, it's not because there's just too many things to do.
What are some of the craziest things you've ever seen at a game when it comes to a fan? Anything that comes to your mind? Maybe at a high school game, professional. What's the craziest thing you've seen?
I saw a guy whip a gun out at a rodeo one time. I was covering that in Rapid City, South Dakota. I've seen people run out onto the field.
What's that like? Is it just like, whatever?
Yeah, it's like, But you laugh after they shake off two security guards and then keep going, and then finally somebody just crushes them with a hit. So that's always good stuff. I don't know. Crazy stuff I've ever seen fan-wise. I love the signs. I think the signs are just the best part. Or how people. I'm not big into the getting dressed up thing. To each their own in that accord.
Yeah.
But I love the signs and the creativity of that because I think being a journalist, the play of words, I really enjoy that.
Now, I haven't seen anything crazy at a game because I just went to a Rays game and nobody was there. But the craziest thing I've seen in Florida was at the laundromat. A guy was shirtless, wearing pajamas, with a boombox blaring like a virgin. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. Not just here in Florida.
But was he barefoot? That's the question.
I don't know, but he was wearing these old, gross pajamas, and he had a boombox like it was the 80s. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
I've lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, so I've seen some weird stuff there. South Dakota, which is a unique experience unto itself.
What's so unique about it?
Well, first off, a lot of women down here are very beautiful. South Dakota, you don't see too many of those same beautiful women. And it's cold as hell.
I think that's what is the problem, is when I lived in Cleveland, I like the city. It's fine, but you never saw any girls because it seems like they either move out of the town or they have boyfriends. They're not outside appreciating the time. So that's what I think you probably saw in Rapid City.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Maybe. That's a good call. I'll go with that because I'll never forget. I had a friend of mine who said, they're not all 10s. Sometimes you just got to talk to one. I'm like, all right, whatever. So, yeah, I'll go that route.
What is a small market like? Like, I worked in Cleveland, and that's a media market, but it was where there wasn't much competition.
Sure.
So the shows that I worked on, everybody recognized me at a bar, a DMV, the library. Does that happen to you where you would get recognized everywhere in like a Rapid City?
When I was in South Dakota, funny story, I worked just outside. Well, the downtown is literally 2 streets. Okay, so there's like no big buildings or anything there.
Wow.
So I would get off the air, and my buddies were in the Air Force at the time, and I'd walk off the air at 11:30. By 11:35, I was joining them in the bar, and for some odd reason, we were on tape delay. So I would see myself in the bar as I'm just walking in. Like, how are you in 2 places at once?
Yeah.
But that's just the way it was. Small markets are fun, man. You learn a lot about yourself because you learn what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. You're willing to test yourself to see what works, what doesn't work. And it helps to get the fear out quite a bit because those first couple markets, it's tough. You still kind of, even today, there's certain situations where you get a little uptight and the nerves kind of pinch you a little bit, and it's interesting.
When have you had the worst where your nerves got the best of you?
The worst my nerves ever got the best of me was in Rapid City, South Dakota, when they tossed me on a live shot, and it was my first live shot, and I'm in the middle of a canyon and Deadwood, and they're playing a football game. Just like that show Deadwood, it's where it's based on.
Yeah, really?
So I look up and I said, look at the beautiful scenery. And I forgot what else I was there talking about. And I turned around, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm at a football game. So that came back to bite me in the butt.
What happened?
My boss is like, really? Look at the beautiful canyons? He goes, were you talking about the cheerleaders? And I'm like, no, stop. But yeah.
Yeah, man, it's weird because you'll have that one mess up, but did it ever get to your head? Because I've had that where I might have a speech moment when I'm talking to someone on the phone and it gets to your head. How do you recover from it? Like, were you down on yourself for the first few days, or were you able to move on?
You just get that next chance, man.
Yeah.
You got to, you know what? You can't beat yourself down. You got to move on from it. I had a stumble. In fact, this year I was doing the Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston first game. I had a stumble with CBS off the block, and it stuck with me because I was super pissed. I should have shook it off, and I wasn't able to shake it until halftime, and then I had a producer in my ear while I was talking. So, and you know what that's like. It's hard to keep your own words going when you have a producer still talking in your ear, and you're trying to figure out what they're saying, but you can't quite get out your words. And that at that time, that kind of stuck with me. But I even called my mentors. I was like, look, I don't know if CBS is going to bring me back. But they brought me back a couple weeks later, and they're bringing me back again this week. They brought me back a couple weeks, weeks ago in Baltimore. So, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. Put one foot in front of the other, because it sucks when you mince your words and you can't get them out, and that's kind of your job.
Yeah, because you can't let it get to you, because if you do, you're not going to improve.
Mm-hmm.
If you let it get to you, you're never going to get any better, and you're never going to get to where you want. If you let one mess up ruin your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it eats at you. And that's the one thing I'll take home with me. I wear it on my sleeve. If I have a bad show on Sunday night, because my off days are Mondays and Tuesdays, if I have a bad show on Sunday night, I'm pissed for Monday and Tuesday all day. It does not, it sticks with me.
Don't you maybe try to work out or meditate? Does anything maybe help you calm your nerves, though?
It's not so much nerves. I just get irritated,
I'm that way, too.
And, yeah, I definitely work out. But, in fact, my friend thinks that I'm a perfect candidate to do yoga because I need to calm down. I'm one of those always intense, always going guys. So
I've been thinking about that, too. Like, I'm so uptight at times that yoga seems like a weird thing to do, but, like, what if we were to do it, not with each other, but, like, what if we were to do it and it becomes the best thing ever? Like, everyone says, do yoga, and I'm like, maybe I should do yoga, you know what I mean?
And I could use it, but then again, I'm not someone that can sit down and be
That's
still for a while. I can't. It drives me nuts. I need to always be moving. In fact, when I'm at the gym, I don't even like to talk to other people.
Oh, I hate it.
I see my friends, I'm cool with that, but it's like, just give them a nod and move on. I'm there to do work, and I'm such a workaholic, I always think I'm somewhere to do work. So even if I'm out, like, at the beach, I got to be doing something. So, yeah.
Does that ever drive your wife crazy, though, when you're always doing something? Does she ever want to just watch Netflix and relax or something, and you're just thinking about your next report? Like, does it ever get to you too much that you're so hyperactive and driven?
Yes. It drives my family nuts. It drives my girlfriend nuts. It drives people I work with nuts. They know I'm always pushing for more and trying to push the envelope. So I have to temper that quite a bit. It's difficult for me, but I think I do a pretty good job at it. I'm not always on people. I'm not on people's nerves by any means, but it's a case of you just gotta. I don't know. I hate the phrase "stay within yourself," but that's kind of what I do. And my girlfriend's favorite thing to say to me is, "Where are you going now?"
Yeah.
So I'm always getting up and moving, and whether we're watching Netflix or whatnot.
Do you ever find yourself burning out, or is it just that you love each second?
Yes and no. I wake up in the morning sometimes going, all right, yes, I get to do this today. And then there's sometimes like, dude, I got to go to work today.
Yeah.
But I think about it, I'm like, well, look what I do for a living. I can't complain. And at the same token, even if I would complain, there's always somebody out there that wants my job.
Yeah.
And that's what pushes me. because I know that there's some kid coming out of college or somebody in a bigger, lesser market who's like, I want that job. I want to go home. So I'm always motivated to work. Plus, I want to go to the next level. So that pushes me to get better.
What is your dream job? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years?
Hopefully at MLB Network, I guess. I love baseball, or at least in a network capacity, where it's dedicated to sports, because it's very difficult in the local media markets now to do sports and do it well enough with the ample amount of time that you're given and provided. Plus, the pay's a lot better up there. So, I've heard the more at network level, the more it's a network, the less you have to do and the more you make. Which is always a nice thing for all of us, But I don't know if it's in my cards. I hope it is. We'll see.
What are some of the best games that you have ever covered?
Wow, that's such a crazy question. I'll tell you this much, and for Lightning fans, it really stinks, but I loved covering the Stanley Cup Final. To me, that was incredible.
I'm from Illinois, so that was great for me.
Yeah, see? I mean, in Chicago, I'll tell you right now, the national anthem they do there is incredible.
Oh, dude, it's
incredible.
Chills.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Sonia Bryson did an amazing job here. Chicago, the pageantry of that whole thing is awesome. I've covered games in Pennsylvania where it's been negative 22 degrees feel-like temperature.
I hate that. I hate cold weather so much.
That gets to you. I've covered the Winter Classic outdoors hockey in a baseball stadium, so that's incredible. Super Bowls, Daytona 500. Those are all just major fun events to do, but you don't realize how fun they are when you're doing it. You realize it a couple days and say, damn, that was pretty cool.
That's
afterward.
how I am. Like, when I have an interview, you're just doing it as work, but you'll listen over or you'll think about it and you're like, wow, that was fun. Like, isn't it weird how when we're doing a thing in the media, we are just in the zone, but then afterwards we're like, damn, this is pretty badass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're focused on the moment. You're focused on what's happening and what you're saying, and you don't get the opportunity to really soak it all in. I was standing next to Vince Vaughn talking with him last year at Daytona, and I'm just like, I'm really talking to Vince Vaughn right now. And I didn't think about that for a second. It's more of I should probably try to get a microphone in his face and ask him a couple questions, because it was Jeff Gordon's last Daytona 500.
Did you get to talk to him?
I was talking with him, but we didn't talk on camera. His publicist grabbed me, and he said to me, he's like, see, you went a little too far there. You went a little too far. In that whole Vince Vaughn voice. So that was pretty funny. We got a good laugh out of that. But, yeah, it's just little moments like that, man. It's makes this job pretty damn cool, and the things that we strive for when we were kids.
So now me and you were talking off the air. You're going to be covering the Baltimore Chiefs game, right?
Right, the Ravens and Chiefs this weekend.
What is Baltimore like? I feel like it's not a great city, but I feel like it's one that gets way too much hate.
I think I see what you're saying in your earlier point, what you're bringing up. The crime up there, right?
It's horrendous.
Well, they get, when I think I was up there last, 2-3 weeks ago, it was their 300th murder of the year. That's too much. Obviously,
it's a record.
It's too much. But as far as Baltimore's a beautiful city. There's so many things to do around there, whether it's the Inner Harbor or Federal Hill, or just there's a lot going on. And then DC's a hop, skip, and a jump down 495. That's 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah,
down the Beltway. So it's really not that far. It's a great area. Just unfortunately, the crime just does it in. I would have taken a job in Baltimore as opposed to moving to Tampa Bay in 2 seconds, just because it's a passionate fan base.
Oh yeah.
And then it's a fun city. There's plenty to do around there.
What are some other towns that you love to visit? Is it maybe like New York City?
I
Philly?
was just in New York right after Baltimore. I love Philadelphia. My family's from there. Love Chicago.
Damn right.
Chicago's amazing. In fact, I told Kyle Schwarber the other night at Thanksmas, which was cool. He sat in there, did a shot with him. I was like, hey, I was at your first game. And he goes, really? I go, yeah, it was the night that after the Hawks won the Stanley Cup, Joe Madden lifted the cup, and I go, you came in the ninth inning. He goes, yeah, and I struck out. So, yeah, they were like, let's do a shot. So that was pretty funny. But let's see what else. Oh, and I love Boston. Boston's a great town.
It seems like one that everyone hates on just because the fans are annoying, but it's probably a fun town, right?
Oh, it's an incredible town. Just walking around Boston, I mean, the history. I'm a big history buff, so the walking around Boston, Paul Revere, and have a Sam Adams across from Sam Adams' tomb, grave. It's just stuff like that is pretty awesome. It's good stuff.
What are some underrated towns here that you like to visit? Because we know all the big markets,
sure,
but what are some medium markets that you like to visit?
Wow, that's a great question. Pittsburgh. I know it's a big city,
yeah,
but I like Pittsburgh.
It's a medium market, kind of.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Boy, oh boy, that's a great question. I got to think of where I've been to. Atlanta plays. Savannah's awesome.
Yeah,
but there's certain. Charleston's great. There's certain markets like that that are terrific. And Myrtle Beach wasn't too terrible. I mean, it's a good week at a time spot for most people.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know. That's a great question, though.
Are there any towns that you dread to go to, that you just go, ugh?
Dallas.
Really?
I cannot stand the Cowboys.
Oh, dude.
As an Eagles fan, I
that
can't.
Those fans embrace a wife beater that threw a girl on the couch and they're cheering for him, that fan base makes me want to vomit. I despise every single part about that pathetic organization.
I mean, I grew up not a Cowboys fan. If I was told to cover the Cowboys, I would cover them completely impartially, just like I would any other team. But as far as not my favorite team, not my favorite city, I've been to Dallas a couple times.
What's it like?
It's okay. It's kind of way too spread out with that in Fort Worth and Arlington and all that. It's like all over. But I love the food there. I will say this. Good food there. Love the barbecue. Love San Antonio.
I've heard good things about that.
San Antonio's great. Offered a job there before I took it in Tampa here. Had to turn it down. Pay was terrible. So couldn't do it. And plus, I didn't want to, I figured I'd be at the Riverwalk eating barbecue all the time. I would have been fat as hell.
And there's not much to talk about there. It's just the Spurs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we would have covered the Cowboys, and that was a big part of another reason why I didn't go there.
True. Have you had any mentors that have helped you along the way? Maybe any famous anchors that have given you some great advice?
Well, like I said, Dan Hellie over at NFL Total Access, I started off with him, which is amazing. When he worked in Orlando, he got offered a job in D.C. right before I took my first job in Rapid City, South Dakota. And they would always tell me, just be you. Don't try to be somebody else, because ultimately that's who's going to come out, whether it's 10 years down the road or 5 minutes into your first sportscast. They're going to see the real you regardless, so just be you. Take things from other people that you like, study that, but don't try to be them and emulate them, because they already made a name for themselves. Now you need to make a name for yourself. So I was stuck with that, and Zach Klein would always just tell me, brevity is a key, man. Be to the point, get to the point. Don't beat around the bush, but people aren't going to want you to always sugarcoat things, but be honest. And that's helped.
Now, let's talk about some sports, since
Sure.
Obviously you cover it. Why is the NFL so average this year? Is it just me, and because I'm not in Illinois rooting for the Bears, but there's just something about this season that I'm not digging. I'm not into the games that much. I watched Jessica Jones. I didn't watch Dallas Packers. I'm just not really digging the season. Are you getting that vibe?
Who's Jessica Jones?
It's a show on Netflix. It's a superhero show.
Oh, see, that's why. I'm still watching West Wing on Netflix, man. I don't watch a lot of
What a boring
TV.
show.
Actually, I really like it. It's funny. But, no, there's a lot of parody this year. I mean, a ton of parody. And think about this. How many quarterbacks have gotten injured this season? I mean, it's been incredible. The amount of injuries this year in football have been insane. And it's just even the Bucs with their injuries yesterday. It's just taking teams away and taking them out of it. Key players, even though Steelers are right in the thick of things, when they lost Le'Veon Bell early on, that hurt them. Tony Romo going down with the Cowboys, that killed them. There's just so many injuries. Sam Bradford with the Eagles, and
the NFC East is so bad.
It's terrible.
It's like the NFC West of 5 years ago. Do you notice that?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
It's really bad right now. The fact the talent pool has gone down, way down in the NFC East, and that's a problem. I mean, when you look at Dallas and their offensive line, they should not be losing games the way they are. But then again, they also lost to Marco Murray because Jerry Jones didn't want to spend the money on him, and then Tony Romo getting injured, and you have to stick in Brandon Whedon and Matt Castle and all these guys. That's why the quarterback position is so important in this league. I mean, look at Colin Kaepernick and what he went from being a superstar on the brink of a superstar to being pretty much they're going to get rid of him in San Francisco. Jay Cutler, no offense, they may have given him a new contract, but he hasn't exactly done anything great in Chicago.
He's been good this year, and of course, the year he's good is the year that the rest of the team. Robbie Gould can't make a field goal. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I noticed that. That's the guy that was pretty much automatic for Chicago, just all of a sudden can't make them. But I'll tell you this, you bring up field goals, and that's a big part of what's going on this year. We're not seeing all the points. When teams would score touchdowns, field goal kickers would pretty much get an automatic practice shot to kick a field goal.
Yeah.
Okay? Now they have to kick them from 33 yards out. There's no warm-up for that. They have to go out there and just kick the damn ball. So there's a big difference. They're not getting that automatic chip shot. It's like, honestly, it's like you playing basketball, right? And somebody giving you, say, hey, take a couple of shots down low, just figure out where the hoop and the rim are. Yeah. Now go back to about 12-foot jumper and then shoot it. And you got to have a feel, These kickers are going in cold. They don't have a feel.
Now, who do you see winning the Super Bowl? What is your matchup? Do you have any idea?
That's a great question at this point.
Because I don't know. It could be the Seahawks for all we know. You know what I mean?
I really like Carolina. Even though they don't have Calvin Benjamin, I really like Carolina. I don't know if they're going to run the table, but just the way Cam's playing, their defense behind Luke Kuechly and the pressure that they're getting, they're really good. I would have to go Carolina and I hate to say it, but Patriots.
Oh, I'm so sick of that. I want them to go away.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with success that they have, especially if they're going to get any home games. I mean, I know people are going to have to go through Denver now with their record, and I don't know if Brock Osweiler is going to be able to get it done, and Peyton Manning's just a shell of what he used to be. So I'd have to go, and Gronk played yesterday, so I think it's going to be New England, Carolina, and I think Carolina gets it done behind Cam Newton.
But what about the fact that they're 11-0? Could they maybe fizzle out in the playoffs, and this is just a practice run?
Sure, but as you said, I don't know if the parity's there.
It's true.
You have to go to Carolina. It's not like you're going to Green Bay, so it's going to be a different environment for that. I think Cam Newton, unless somebody can figure out a way to stop him and what Greg Olsen are doing and Jonathan Stewart running the ball, what that offensive line has been able to provide, I don't see Cam Newton losing.
I don't either. I think he's going to be one of the only read option quarterbacks that's going to be successful. Him and Russell Wilson. I just see guys like Kaepernick just being gone. I never thought Kaepernick was going to be good. Did you?
Well, he came out of nowhere. I thought it was surprising when Ron Jaworski had said, hey, he's got the makings to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Well, that guy's a dumbass.
It's like pump the brakes here, Jaws, just a little bit, all right? Kaepernick hadn't proven anything yet, and the defense pretty much led them to back-to-back NFC championship games. So it's just I could see your point, but I don't think they're going to be the only ones. I mean, if you were referring to like Robert Griffin, no, he doesn't count. So, but if you want to talk about guys just that are currently in the league, I would say they're probably going to be the most too successful. But I also don't see Russell Wilson being a read option quarterback for the rest of his career. I think he's going to have to become.
What
is
your take on him?
I think he's a great leader. I really do. I think he's a great athlete. I think it's a case we don't get a chance to see enough of him to appreciate him as much as he should.
Because he's on the West Coast. It's
right.
A major market for TV.
Right. Well, yeah, Seattle's a top 12 TV market.
Well, it's not one that
we're going to see
wants to cover.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they cover them pretty well, I guess, but it's the draw of a winning team. And I think, Russell Wilson is pretty dynamic. I don't think they've taken away quite a few of his pieces and losing Golden Tate, even though they brought in Jimmy Graham. And now Marshawn Lynch is hurt. So it's going to fall on his shoulders and what they do the rest of the way. And I think that's going to be very interesting for the Bucs, actually. because they've definitely been handed some injuries they're going to have to fight through these next couple weeks.
What is your take on the Bucs? Any chance they can make the playoffs?
They have to win out, and I think of the two teams, Seattle or Minnesota, I think it's Minnesota who's got to lose. But remember, they've got to win their final 3 games of the regular season, right? And essentially, Seattle or Minnesota have to lose their final 3.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, they're 2 games out at this point, and a team that's really banged up. I mean, the Bucs are an injured football team right now. Vincent Jackson getting hurt was
Huge.
Not a good thing. Gerald McCoy's hand is all in the locker room. I did a story on 6 for it. He's got about 20 stitches running down the middle of his hand. It's like double the size what it should be.
Yeah.
Their secondary's not that good. 6 wins, 7 wins for this team, for a team that went number 1 with the first overall pick, is a great turnaround. And then look for it next year. You know, I mean, Seattle. I still think the Saints are going to be down next year because Drew Brees is only getting older. Even though he beat the Bucs yesterday, but we couldn't get any pressure on him.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, that was terrible. But yeah, that's what happens, kids, when you don't eat all day. But yeah.
Before I let you go, how good could Jameis be? What is your take?
Wow, the ceiling on Jameis is really high. I will tell you that. If he continues to study film the way he does. Remember, he has got Mike Evans, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and Doug Martin currently. And if they hold on to Doug Martin, I think it's smart. And then they're going to add another wide receiver. I don't know if they keep Vincent Jackson going into next year, to be honest, but they might. But he's got a lot of nice young pieces to work with. That offensive line is only going to get better. And I think he's only going to improve. Do I think he's going to be Tom Brady and walk amongst the giants of Joe Montana and Tom Brady? I don't know. I mean, I would have to say those are once-in-a-generation quarterbacks, you know. So I can't really put it out there. But do I think he can win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. I think he's got the killer mentality. He proved it on that 3rd and 19 run. I think one day he can win a Super Bowl, if not maybe more. But it just depends on the pieces they put around him.
What do you think of Lovie Smith? Because I'm a Bears fan, and I think he's going to hold you guys back. I'm not the biggest Lovie guy.
Lovie is great for camaraderie in a locker room. They'll play for him. Do I think he is the rah-rah guy that they need or the motivator that they need? I don't know, because we've seen how many penalties they accrue every week. And a coach who is putting his foot you-know-where would get those to stop. And Lovie, pretty much to me, is a very good uncle that these guys don't want to disappoint. And
it's the perfect way of describing Lovie.
I don't really, I don't know. I don't know if he's got what it takes, but I can call it into question, but there's so many things I see with this defense, how injured they are, and he's a defensive coach. And they should be playing better than they are. Their secondary looks like garbage. But then again, the Bucs have only drafted 1 defensive player the last 2 years. And then you got to call into question how many players they brought in through free agency that turned into garbage. So you have to wonder what happens with the scouting department there. I don't think Lovie has his defense set yet. I think he's getting it there. But it's going to take some time. And once we see it, then, because if not, he keeps bringing in your former Bears, you know?
I know.
So we'll see what happens. It's going to take some time.
Now, before I let you go, where can people find your work online and on TV?
You can go on to Chris Fischer. That's ChrisFischer07 at Twitter. That was a long answer. Good God. Sorry about that. Also, WTSP Chris Fischer on Facebook. If you can like me, that'd be cool. The bosses would really freaking love that because they push that quite a bit. And you can always find us at WTSP.com.
Well, man, I moved to town about 7 months ago, and I was drawn by your news reports. You're not biased, and you ask good things to these athletes. So keep up the good work, and thank you for coming on Hoppe Hour.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ron.
This has been Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, saying peace out. All right, peace.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour. This is an official broadcast of Hoppe Radio. For more info, check out hopperadio.com and hoppesworld.com.